Okay. Oh, yes. Now we are learning, we're continuing in this beautiful Dvar Malchut, the royal words of royalty that the Rebbe, the king, what do you call it? King Moshiach, doesn't sound so nice, King Moshiach, Melech HaMashiach, said in 1991. And there he's explaining this thing of Tazria. Now, a little bit of this is not, it talks about also next week's Torah portion, which is Metzora, because the majority of years, these two Torah portions are joined together. Tazria and Metzora are joined together. This year, they're not joined together. So it's a little bit, we have to dance around these and make it applicable to now, but we'll do it. I mean, the ideas are certainly applicable, but it's just that it's not applicable to the time that we're in. Okay, let's go. The reading of the Torah. Okay, so what are we explaining? We're explaining several things. The Rebbe had several questions, and we're trying to answer these questions. One question is, the last actually of the questions was, why is the Mashiach called a leper? Again, the word leper is not the right word. It's Metzora, but because the word Metzora is so uncommon in English, but nevertheless, Metzora is the spiritual disease, impurity. It's an impurity that appears, the signs of which appear on the skin, a discoloration of the skin. And we learned yesterday at 3:00, and we'll continue, God willing, today. There's 4 different types of discoloration, and then there can be a little bit of red inside of it, and that's a little bit, and sometimes the discoloration it has to have 2 hairs in it, it gets better, it spreads out, it gets locked up, and all these difficult laws. And suffice it though to say is that it is a very severe type of impurity, to the degree that if you're even in the same room as a person that has Metzora, is that you too become impure, not the same level as he is, but you become impure. So why is it that the Mashiach is called impure? Why? What's impure about Mashiach? How can it be? Also, there's another thing. This week's Torah portion talks about the impurity, the sickness, the spiritual sickness, which is called Metzora. But its name indicates the opposite. Its name indicates that it's good. Tazria means giving seed, birth. And Metzora is something like death. So if so, this week's Torah portion, it seems to have the wrong name. It's called Tazria, which is a good thing, and its content is this Metzora disease, which is bad. Next week's Torah portion, and again, remind that when Rebbe spoke this, these 2 portions were joined together. Next week's Torah reading, Metzora is a bad name. We're talking about Metzora, and the whole content is talking about healing. Healing, what to do in order to heal. So again, the content seems to be wrong. What's going on? The content of this week is bad, and it has a good name. And the content of next week is good, the healing of it, and it has a bad name, Metzora. Also says the Rebbe, remember, it sort of doesn't make any sense. This week is called Tazria, that's the name of it, means to be healed. And next week is Metzora, means to be sick. So usually a person is sick and then he gets healed. Why is it this week talks about being healed and Tazria, and after he's healed, he gets sick again? What does that mean? How does that work? So the Rebbe will explain. Sibas Efsharius. Okay, the main question, of course, is what does this relate to us? I mean, we're not, these ideas are very, intricate, wonderful, complicated, beautiful, deep, mysterious ideas, but what's it got to do with us in our day-to-day life? except maybe we can impress people, want to hear about what I know about Kabbalah and this and the Panemius, the inside of the Tzoraat, this. What does it mean to me? The possibility that there can be a nurture of bad things until there is impurity in the world, and impurity in the world begilui bechitzoniat in a revealed external way. From the Orot Elyonim, from what Kabbalah explains, that this disease of Metzora, this condition, really comes from a very, very high and a holy place. He is mipnei gadol milas oros elyonim, because of the great holiness of these lights. She'enam yocholim lishtaleh bekelim, they can't be inside of any vessels. Let's just take the example again. We see this example day to day, right? Who doesn't want to be a multi-billionaire? Wonderful, great thing to be a multi-billionaire. You can give a lot of charity, can help a lot of people, right? Almost everybody that wins the lottery has tragic ends to it. They go crazy. They have all of a sudden millions of enemies. They think that they're God, and they squander all the money on stupid things, and they end up being paupers or much worse, at the end of like a year or something like that. 90-something% of them. The only people that get this big blessing of all this money, and that they can really, cope with it, are people that as soon as they get the money, they run immediately and they get a treasurer, an auditor, or something, whatever, and they take advice from people. They know what to do with the money. They have it all planned out. They control themselves. Very rare. Very rare it happens. So in other words, getting a lot of money is a good thing. What's wrong with that? It's honest money. He gets the money. What's wrong with it? But because he doesn't have the vessels for it, so it comes out to be a tragedy. The person thinks that he knows everything. I know somebody like that, unfortunately, that he won like 3 million shekels or something like that, which is not, a tremendous amount of money, but still, it's like, I don't know, in those days, let's say it was, $1 million. So he got $1 million, won $1 million from nothing, all of a sudden. And the guy went crazy. He went berserk. He thought that he was, just infallible, and he started getting into gambling and terrible. Divorced his wife, and a nice fellow. Just went crazy. And the same thing is with anything. Sometimes too much good could drive a person crazy. Too much success makes a person think he's God. Goes to his head. So that's just physical. That's just an example I'm giving. The same thing is also with godliness. Too much godliness. The Jewish people at Mount Sinai, God spoke directly to them. They couldn't take it. It says they all died. Too much. When they got out of Egypt, it was too much freedom at one time. Professor Viktor Frankl talks about it. What's it called? I think it's called, the bends. Sometimes a person, and the deep sea divers, if you release the pressure too quickly, they go crazy. So it's the same thing. He was in the Holocaust. This Professor Viktor Frankl, I read a lot of his books. He was in the Holocaust and he got out. He said that itself can be one of the most dangerous things. It can be as dangerous as being in the camps, because people got out and suddenly the release of all this. In fact, he himself, the release, all of a sudden he was free. Couldn't believe it, right? And he got out and he discovered his whole family was killed and everyone was killed, and he was just, the sudden freedom. It was just too, how do you say, shocking. Freedom is a good thing. Freedom is a great thing. Money is a good thing, right? It's just going to be too, success is wonderful, but it can go to people's heads. People can go crazy. Power. How does it say? Power corrupts. Absolutely. Power corrupts. Absolutely. Power is a good thing. A person has power, he can do it. But what does a person want? Doesn't know what he wants. He goes crazy. Says the Rebbe, all these things I'm just giving you are just sort of examples to come and try to explain something that really is unexplainable, not understandable. The Rebbe is telling us that we can't really understand it. That's the reason for the Metzora, that these revelations of God, blessings, whatever, are so high that the person can't take it. He hasn't got the vessels for it. Or the language of Kabbalah and Chassidut, Orot the Tohu, the lights of Tohu, which are above, to be clothed in the vessels of Tikkun. The lights of Tohu is like pure godliness, you want to call it, but it's too much. Shemehem nishtalshalu kol inyanim abilti ritzuim, that from this can come all of the bad things. All the bad things in the world. Listen, if you look and see, like Haman, right? We had Haman, you got Hitler. I hate to take examples like this. Stalin, right? Mao Zedong, these people, they killed millions and millions of people they killed, and no one could stop them. No one could stop them. And just killing everybody would love them. They were like Stalin was just adored by his people, and they say that he killed about 50 million of his own people. They don't even know to this day how many he killed. 50, 60, 30 million people. Where did he get the power to do such a thing? Right? Who was he? They say that he had really tremendous talents, tremendous memory, tremendous this, right? He knew exactly where to push, exactly where to go. Evil. Evil has a tremendously high source to it. Has a tremendously high source. Because it's used in a bad way, it's totally destructive. But if you could reveal the source of this evil, what's the source of the evil? God. God creates everything. God creates everything there is. For God to create something that's the opposite of God, this is a tremendously high source. That's the whole story of Purim, how Haman got so much power that he could destroy all the Jews. Only an amazing miracle of tremendous, incredible, unexpected self-sacrifice on the part of the Jews. That's what turned the tide. But that was totally unnatural for the Jews to do such a thing. If they wouldn't have done it, then that's it. There would be no Judaism. There would be no Jews anymore. There would be no godliness in the world. I mean, probably God would make another. I don't know what God would do. In any case, this is what happened. What's this going on in the service of man? These upper lights, pure lights, which are the source of evil in the world. Why are they the source of evil? Because because it's too high to be in a normal vessel. And this causes a movement of ratzo, leaving the world. Leaving the world. Maybe I'm just making this up, but could be that's why these evil people, they're so bent on destruction, on destroying things. Okay, these high lights, that's the idea of kalos and nefesh. Maybe that's why these people are so bent on destroying and killing people. Oh, it's really quite amazing. I mean, Hitler was just a genius in destroying and killing people and inspiring his whole nation to kill and to maim and to destroy and to conquer with no conscience whatsoever. It's like you feel you have a bad conscience if you brush your teeth or something. You have a bad conscience. Doesn't it bother? Don't you feel a little bit guilty? You just brushed your teeth. What? That's stupid. What do you? That's the way all of his soldiers, the whole entire nation, was about killing people. No problem whatsoever. And all these others, Mao Zedong and Stalin, in a lot of ways, they were even worse. They were even worse. And they killed their own people. Okay, so it says this power which evil, bad, anti-God, anti-life, really it comes from everything comes from God. This comes from a tremendously high source. And when it's revealed in the world, it causes in the world to be a desire to leave the world. Shekala tichla ora nefesh v'tistalik me'akelim. That the soul just wants to leave the body, get out of the world. The world is not a vessel for this light, if you want to call it. Miut akelim shelo yiyeh bechinas yispashtus lamata means that there's what to destroy the vessels. There shouldn't be any vessels, so there shouldn't be any revelation below. Every moment in this world is like pain. Elalistalek, just to go away. This is what we just learned last week about Narav and Avihu. Narav and Avihu, right? They brought death into the holy temple, into the Holy of Holies. Too much light. This there can be unique as a chitzonim. And because of this high light of godliness, but because it comes into the world and the world is not ready for it, that's the opposite of creation. God wants there to be a world that's filled with life, but everything according to its measure. Nature. God wants there to be nature. Because there's no vessels, the otiot, the kedusha, or letters of holiness. Azai then, from this level of running to God alone, that can come out negative things. What's called nurture for external forces. Bad egotism. After a person, for instance, after a person prays properly and thinks about God and gets excited about God, if you don't put that excitement into a good thing in Torah, there can be a person can get angry and lose his temper. Right? What are you disturbing me for? You have an idea who I am? Get out of my way. I'm holy. There can be egotism and selfishness. Usually egotism and selfishness, what does it come from? A person really feels himself. He's really sure of himself. To a certain degree, this is the Eastern religions, to a certain degree. Don't think about anything else. Don't think about the world. Don't think about your parents. Don't think about connecting to anything except for yourself. Go to the essence of who you are, your soul, the higher levels, the levels which are about to be, you're going to be enlightened, you're going to be out. So the person's out of the world. This is very counterproductive. It's very counter reality. Right? What's the idea that everybody just doesn't get married and there's no children and everybody just sits and goes all day or whatever? And that's ideal, right? So there shouldn't be any more world, then there won't be any more pain in the world. Well, that's pretty, what do you call it, nihilistic, in a nice word, diabolical, to use a not nice word, selfish, to use a more common word. Highness, spiritual life. To a certain degree, that's what all these other religions are, right? They want to have these lights. They want to have, the world is not a good place, right? The world is not a good place. That's basically the basis of all religions in the world. The world is not a good place. We want to go to heaven. We want to be clinging to the upper levels. World is not good. Why is it not good? Because the heavens are so good. It means that there's too much light, too much egotism, too much selfishness. A person's thinking about himself and he just wants to feel himself more and more and more. I'm going to go to heaven. Don't believe these distractions. That's all a big lie. That's a big lie. But the lie is based on a tremendous truth. And the truth is that really God is really very tremendously high, holy, and something incomprehensible to the world. And the closer that you get to God, the better. But really what the fact of the matter is God as we understand him, God, as we understand him, as we think we understand him, that's not really the essence of God. That's just high lights that come down. And because our mind can't comprehend it, so they make up all these religions and getting out of the world and being holy and being separate. How to get out of this? What's the problem? What's the solution? What's the solution to too much spirituality, to too much emphasis on leaving the world? What's the cure for all these religions in the world? Imratz lib chashuv lechad. Like the rabbis say, if your heart, in the book of Sefer Yetzirah, a Kabbalistic book, what's the solution? If your heart runs to God, shuv lechad, come back to God's oneness. Imratz lib chashuv lechad. What does it mean? This book, Sefer Yetzirah, comes to Sefer Yetzirah. It's called the Book of Formation. This is a very, very basic mystical Kabbalistic book. And in this Kabbalistic book, you figure what's Kabbalah? It says you're not supposed to really learn Kabbalah until you really have a good grasp of the Torah, because it's very easy to misunderstand Kabbalah. And your understanding can come to all sorts of bizarre philosophies and values and things about how bad the world is and how great I am, and etc. So that's why it says in this Kabbalah book a very, very basic idea of Kabbalah. This is it says that four great tzaddikim, they went into the secrets of Kabbalah. One of them was Rabbi Akiva. The other three all met with tragedy. One went crazy, one died, one is that. Rabbi Akiva said he went in peace and he came out in peace. What does it mean? That if your heart desires to come closer to God, and you do come close to God, you go into the secrets of the creation, the secrets of the Creator, shuv lechad, come back to the world. God wants to be in this world. Sha'achrei haratzah, that after you have this tremendous desire and surge of spirituality and holiness, you have to come back to the world. Shehu inyan bittul. This means I want to come close to God. I want to be holy. I want highlights. I want to get to levels that I don't understand. I want this, but who am I? I'm giving up this whole I and what I want and my holiness. I'm giving for what God wants. That's called bittul d'metziut. That a person completely surrenders all of his I and his ideas and his urges and his desires. She'en lo koach klal litpa'el v'rishvei eish v'bechinas yesh v'davar elohu ka'evan domen. That he doesn't become excited by all these ideas, what he wants. But he becomes like a servant. Like, what do you want to call it? Like a stone. Evan domen. Like a servant in front of the king. A servant in front of the king. If it becomes close, in front of the king, as lo nishar koach, he doesn't have any power whatsoever. Surrender. Until he's totally surrendered to the king. Is that a good thing? Best in the world. Go to a concert, right? You see that the only people that have a really good, orchestra. You have to have people that are really trained. They play exactly what it says on the music, on the sheet music. They try as much as possible to imitate the intention of the composer. That's called bittul. That's called self-surrender. That's called life. That's called true life in this world. Then everything is beautiful. If all of a sudden one person decides, no, I'm going to play what I want, right? I'll put a little jazz in here. They'll kick him out of the band. They kick him out of the orchestra. And says bittul. There has to be what we call surrender. He could be the greatest violinist in the world. But when it comes to playing this symphony, whatever it is, he plays exactly what it says there. The way he plays it, that's up to him. The way he plays it, but it has to be exactly what it is, and it has to be harmonious with everybody, so he can't stick out. Then yavo ha'hashava ha'efshet b'kelim. Then he can return to the world and can spread out this feeling of inspiration for godliness into vessels below. If he doesn't do this, that's the idea of Tzoraat. That's this idea of this disease. By means of this, by means of coming into the world and utilizing these high feelings of God in the world, he becomes more calm. He doesn't lose his temper. He's more productive. He's happier, right? Things don't get on his mind, on his nerves, and his ego is not insulted and blemished. And every time somebody says something, does something, because he's connected to the real true intention of God, that God wants that he should have a dwelling in this physical world. Nimsa, so it comes out. So it comes out, Shapulas Ashuv, that this idea of coming back into the world that is after your inspiration is that these high, tremendous lights, which are above the world, they become drawn into your day-to-day life. In order you can have the joining of these two opposites of being close to God because I want to, and being in the world because God wants to. In other words, to increase what I receive and to totally not receive anything, only to give to the world. In order to join these two things together of spiritual and physical, Allah, elevation and drawing down, chesed or gevura, what's called love and fear, tzorich liot, there has to be a revelation of something which is higher than both of them. And this is what's called tiferet, beauty. And this source of beauty comes from the crown, which is above the whole entire creation. How do we get to this? We'll find out. What's above? Sha'al Yudab, by means of this, there's the joining of these two opposites together. Allah Amshacha, Ratzav Ashuv, and going up, coming back. That even the highest lights of godliness, which are above everything, should be revealed in this physical world. And that's the whole idea of purifying the Metzora. Next week's Torah portion. Of purifying and healing the Metzora. Taking these two essentially very good things. One is wanting to come close to God, which alone is very destructive. On the other hand, coming back into the world, which if you do that alone is very mundane, and joining them together, that has to have a power which is above both of them. How are you going to join these two things together? How that's going to happen, God willing, we're going to learn tomorrow. It's going to be by means of the Torah. God willing, we'll learn tomorrow. Let's now learn the Yom Yom. All right, it's a grammatical thing in some of the prayers that we make in the Psalms of the day and also the blessing after eating. It's a grammatical changes that the Rebbe wants to make. See you at 3:00, God willing. We'll learn more about the laws of the Metzora. Sometimes there can be a Tzoraat that comes from burn. Sometimes there can be a Tzoraat which comes from a wound. God willing, we'll learn this today at 3:00. Be with us. Hope to see you. Have a good day with Moshiach. 1 minute. Now. Okay. Could be. Good. All right.